Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the stars through the main screen. His hands gripped the rail as the ship moved through space toward the Kepler sector. The message from Earth Command still played in his mind. 17 star systems were gone. Billions of lives lost. The enemy was called the Kethmori, and they ate entire worlds. "Sir, we're getting close to the Altarian system," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station. She was the ship's tactical officer, and her voice was tight with worry. "The long-range sensors are picking up something big." Morrison nodded. "Put it on screen." The view changed to show a distant star system. Even from far away, they could see flashes of light around the third planet. Ships were fighting and dying. The Altarian homeworld was under attack. "My God," whispered Commander Steve Phillips, the ship's engineer. He was a big man with steady hands, but now those hands shook as he looked at the screen. "There are so many of them." The Kethmori fleet looked like a dark cloud around the planet. Thousands of ships moved in perfect formation, like insects in a swarm. At the center of it all was something huge. It was as big as a small moon, black and twisted like a living thing. This was the mothership. "Dr. Murphy to the bridge," Morrison said into his cum unit. Dr. Lisa Murphy arrived a minute later. She was the ship's medical officer, but she also knew about alien biology. Her face went pale when she saw the screen. "Captain, we shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "The reports from the other battles. The Kethmori don't just kill. They consume everything. They strip planets bare and leave nothing alive." Morrison watched the battle raging around the planet. The Altarian defense fleet was fighting hard, but they were losing. Their ships exploded one by one as the dark swarm closed in. The planet's surface was already changing color as the atmosphere was being drained away. "Sir, I'm reading millions of small craft," Carter reported. "They're like drones, all connected somehow. And the mothership, it's not made of metal. It's organic." The Kethmori had come from outside the galaxy. No one knew where exactly, but they had appeared 6 months ago at the edge of known space. The first system they hit was completely destroyed in days. Then the second. Then the third. Each time, they grew stronger. The Galactic Council had tried to stop them. They sent the combined fleets of 50 different species. All of them had fallen. The Kethmori learned from each battle, adapted their tactics, and became deadlier. They used weapons that turned the enemy's own biology against them. They could change their ships to match any defense. "Captain," said Phillips, "the Altarian flagship is breaking apart. They're losing." Morrison watched the last of the Altarian fleet die. The planet below was turning gray as the Kethmori drained its life. Soon, another world would be dead. "This is how it always happens," Carter said. "They surround a system, destroy the fleet, then consume everything. The pattern is always the same." The Defiant was alone. One human ship against a force that had destroyed 17 civilizations. Earth had sent them as a last hope, but what could they do? The Kethmori had crushed armies. They had eaten worlds. They were unstoppable. "Sir, they've noticed us," Carter sighed. "Several drone groups are changing course. They're coming our way." Morrison looked at his crew. These were good people. Amy Carter had graduated top of her class from the academy. Steve Phillips could fix anything that broke. Lisa Murphy had saved hundreds of lives during the Mars plague. They didn't deserve to die here, so far from home, but they were the only ones left to try. "All stations, prepare for combat," Morrison ordered. "This is it, people. We're all that stands between them and the next system." The Kethmori drones moved toward them like a black tide. Each one was the size of a fighter ship, but they moved together like parts of one giant creature. Their weapons glowed with a sick green light. They had used these same weapons to destroy every fleet that had faced them. They're not like anything we've fought before, Phillips said. Our weapons might not even work on them. Morrison thought about Earth, about the billions of people who were counting on them. He thought about the 17 dead worlds, the empty systems where life had once thrived. The Keth Mori couldn't be allowed to continue. Maybe our weapons won't work, he said, but we have to try. For everyone who's already died, and everyone who's still alive. The first wave of drones reached weapon range. Their green beams lanced out toward the Defiant. The ship shook as the alien weapons hit the shields. But something was wrong. The beams that had cut through the hulls of a dozen different alien ships barely scratched the human shields. That's impossible, Carter said, checking her readings. Their weapons should have torn us apart. Morrison felt a spark of hope. Maybe they had a chance after all. All weapons, open fire, he commanded. The Defiant's guns roared to life, sending streams of metal slugs and energy beams into the swarm. The Keth Mori drones, expecting the usual energy weapons, were caught off guard. The kinetic rounds punched through their organic hulls like paper. For the first time in months, the Keth Mori were surprised. The Keth Mori drones scattered as the Defiant's weapons tore through their ranks. Morrison watched in amazement as the alien ships that had seen so deadly moments before began to fall apart under his ship's guns. Keep firing, he shouted. Don't let them regroup. Amy Carter's fingers flew over her controls. The tactical display showed hundreds of enemy contacts, but they were moving in confusion now. The perfect formations that had destroyed so many fleets were breaking apart. Sir, I don't understand it, she said. Their shields aren't stopping our railgun rounds. It's like they were never designed to handle solid projectiles. Commander Phillips was rerouting power from the engines to the weapons. Captain, whatever's happening, we can't keep this up forever. We're burning through ammunition fast. The Defiant spun through space, its guns never stopping. The human ship moved in ways the Keth Mori had never seen before. Instead of the orderly battle lines that other species used, Morrison was fighting like a street brawler. He would charge forward, fire everything he had, then dart away before the enemy could respond. Dr. Murphy was studying the readings from the battle. Captain, I'm seeing something strange. Their bioweapons aren't affecting our crew at all. Every other species that fought them reported massive casualties from some kind of biological attack, but we're not even detecting it. Morrison dodged another group of drones, his ship twisting through space in a wild spiral. What does that mean? I'm not sure yet, Murphy replied. But I think we might be immune to whatever killed the other fleets. The Keth Mori mothership was moving now. The massive organic construct began to pulse with an angry red light. Morrison could feel something trying to push into his mind, like a cold whisper at the edge of his thoughts. Everyone stay focused, he warned. Don't listen to whatever they're trying to tell you. Carter gritted her teeth. Sir, it's like they're trying to get inside our heads. But it's not working properly. The queen mind that controlled the Keth Mori fleet was confused. For thousands of years, they had swept across galaxies, consuming everything in their path. They had faced countless species, and all of them had fallen to the same tactics. Bioweapons would weaken the enemy crews, then the swarm would overwhelm them with numbers. But these humans were different. Their minds were chaotic, impossible to predict. They fought without formation, without the careful strategies that other species used. It was like trying to fight a storm. More drones incoming, Carter reported. They're adapting their approach. The new wave of Keth Mori ships moved differently. Instead of the tight formations they had used before, they spread out and attacked from all directions. But Morrison was ready for them. Phillips, give me everything the engines have, he ordered. The Defiant suddenly accelerated, slamming into the middle of the enemy formation. The human ship's armor was designed for this kind of close combat, while the Kethmori drones were built for long-range energy duels. Ramming speed. Morrison yelled. The Defiant crashed through the enemy ranks like a battering ram. Alien ships exploded against its hull as it plowed forward. The Kethmori had never faced an enemy that would deliberately collide with them. "This is insane," Phillips muttered, but he was smiling. "No sane species fights like this." "Good thing we're not sane," Morrison replied. The battle raged for hours. The Defiant was outnumbered 1,000 to 1, but the human ship refused to die. Every time the Kethmori thought they had figured out the humans' tactics, Morrison would do something completely unexpected. He used the gravity of nearby asteroids to slingshot around enemy formations. He fired his weapons in patterns that made no mathematical sense, but somehow worked. He even turned off his engines and let the ship drift, pretending to be dead until the enemy came close enough for a surprise attack. Dr. Murphy was working frantically in the medical bay, analyzing the alien bioweapons. "Captain, I think I understand now. The Kethmori weapons are designed to target specific genetic markers. They've been using the same basic attack for so long that all the galactic species have similar vulnerabilities. But humans are different?" Morrison asked while dodging another swarm of drones. "We evolved in isolation," Murphy explained. "Our genetic structure is completely different from the galactic norm. Their weapons literally don't know how to hurt us." Carter looked up from her station. "That means we're not just immune to their bioweapons. We might be immune to their mind control, too." The revelation changed everything. The Kethmori's greatest weapons were useless against humanity, but the aliens were learning. Morrison could see them adapting their tactics, bringing up new types of ships with different weapons. "They're getting smarter," he said. "We need to end this before they figure out how to hurt us." The mothership was moving closer now, its massive bulk blotting out the stars. Organic turrets grew from its surface, pointing at the Defiant. These weren't the bioweapons that had failed before. These were something new. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildup," Carter warned. "Whatever they're about to fire, it's big." Morrison made a decision that would have been impossible for any other species. Instead of running from the massive enemy ship, he flew straight at it. "All power to forward shields," he ordered. "We're going right down their throat." The Defiant charged toward the mothership as energy beams lanced past it. The human ship was too small and too fast for the giant vessel to track properly. Morrison flew between the organic turrets, his ship's guns tearing into the alien hull. For the first time in their long history, the Kethmori felt fear. This single human ship was doing something that entire fleets had failed to do. It was hurting them. The Queen Mind sent out a desperate signal, calling for reinforcements from across the galaxy. But deep in its collective consciousness, a new thought was forming. Maybe these humans were the key to something greater than conquest. Maybe they were the answer to a problem the Kethmori had been fleeing from for millennia. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A single human ship had fought the Kethmori and won. For the first time in months, the terrifying swarm had been forced to retreat. The impossible had happened. Captain Morrison stood in the communications room of the Defiant, watching messages pour in from across known space. Alien species that had been hiding in the far corners of the galaxy were suddenly talking about hope again. "Captain, we're getting transmission requests from over 40 different fleets," said Communications Officer Helen Ross. She was young, barely out of the academy, but she had been working non-stop to handle all the incoming messages. "They all want to know how we did it." Morrison rubbed his tired eyes. The battle had lasted 18 hours, and none of them had slept since. But the victory had cost them. The Defiant was damaged. They were low on ammunition, and the Kethmori would be back with more ships. "Put the fleet commanders on screen," he said, the main display filled with alien faces. There was Admiral Zeth of the Corvin Republic, General Quinn from the Stellar Federation, and dozens of others. All of them looked desperate, but for the first time in months, they also looked hopeful. "Captain Morrison," said Admiral Zeth, his blue-scaled face showing exhaustion. "We've been monitoring your battle. How did you survive their bioweapons?" Morrison looked at his crew. They had agreed to share their discovery with the other species. If they were going to win this war, they would need allies. "We're immune," he said simply. "Human biology is different from yours. Their weapons don't work on us." The alien commanders leaned forward in their chairs. General Quinn, a tall insectoid being, clicked his mandibles in excitement. "That changes everything. If you can lead us against them, ... We can try," Morrison said. "But we'll need your help. One ship can't fight their entire fleet." Over the next few days, ships began arriving in the Kepler sector. They came from all over the galaxy, species that had never worked together before. The Kethmori had made them all refugees, and now they were ready to fight back. Chief Petty Officer Dan Tucker was in charge of preparing the boarding parties. He was a tough man who had served in the Mars conflicts, and he knew how to fight. In close quarters, he studied the alien weapons they had captured from the Kethmori drones. "These things are weird," he told Morrison. "They're more like living tissue than metal. Our standard weapons tear right through them, but they might adapt." Morrison nodded. "What do you recommend?" "We modify our weapons to use different types of ammunition," Tucker said. "Keep them guessing. If they adapt to one type, we switch to another." The combined fleet was growing larger every day. Ships from the Altarian survivors, the Corvin Republic, the Stellar Federation, and dozens of smaller species. They had never fought together before, and their tactics were completely different. Helen Ross was working to coordinate communications between all the different species. "Sir, they're having trouble understanding our combat methods. Admiral Zeth says our tactics are too unpredictable." Morrison smiled. "That's exactly what we want. If our own allies can't predict what we're doing, neither can the enemy." The Kethmori. Response came 3 days later. Long-range sensors detected 3 motherships approaching with the largest swarm fleet anyone had ever seen. Millions of drones filled space like a dark cloud. "My God," whispered Commander Phillips. "There are so many of them." But Morrison had been preparing for this. He had studied the Kethmori battle patterns from every engagement. They were incredibly coordinated, but that coordination was also a weakness. They always responded the same way to the same situations. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison," he broadcast to the fleet. "Remember what we practiced. Stay loose, stay unpredictable, and follow my lead." The battle began as the Kethmori swarm approached. The alien fleet. Commanders wanted to form traditional battle lines, but Morrison had different ideas. "Scatter formation," he ordered. "Make them chase us." The combined fleet broke apart and spread across the system. The Kethmori, expecting an orderly battle, were confused by the chaotic movement. Their perfect formations began to break down. As they tried to chase targets that moved in random patterns, Dr. Murphy was monitoring the battle from the medical bay. She had been studying the Kethmori biosignatures and had made another important discovery. "Captain, I'm reading something strange from their motherships," she reported. "The organic components are showing signs of stress. I think their coordination system is being overloaded." Morrison understood immediately. The Kethmori Queen Mind was trying to control millions of ships at once. But human tactics were so random and unpredictable that it was like trying to solve 1,000,000 different puzzles. At the same time, "All ships, increase the chaos," he ordered. Random acceleration, random targeting, random everything. The Allied fleet began moving in patterns that made no sense. Ships would suddenly change direction, fire at targets that seemed unimportant, or break off attacks just when they were winning. It looked like madness, but it was working. The Kethmori swarm began to stutter and hesitate. Drones crashed into each other as conflicting orders came from the overloaded Queen Mind. The perfect coordination that had made them so deadly was becoming their weakness. Chief Tucker led a boarding party onto one of the smaller Kethmori ships. His team used modified human weapons that bypassed the alien bioshields. They moved through the organic corridors like ghosts, taking down the ship's nerve centers. "This is Tucker to Defiant," he reported. "We're inside their ship. The interior is like a giant organism, but our weapons are cutting through it like butter." Similar reports came from boarding parties across the fleet. The Kethmori ships were designed to fight energy weapons and bio-attacks, not the simple kinetic weapons that humans preferred. As the battle continued, Morrison noticed something important. The Kethmori were learning from their mistakes, but they were learning slowly. Their Queen Mind was powerful, but it thought in straight lines. It couldn't adapt to truly random behavior. "Helen, send a message to all ships," Morrison ordered. "Tell them to start using human tactical doctrine. Individual initiative, split-second decisions, and trust your instincts." The alien crews had trouble with this at first. They were used to following orders and working as a unit. But gradually, they began to understand. The Corvin pilots started making sudden turns that even their own commanders couldn't predict. The Stellar Federation gunners began firing at targets. That seemed random, but somehow made sense. The tide of battle was turning. For the first time since the war began, the Kethmori were losing ground. Their perfect swarm was breaking apart under the chaotic assault of species that had learned to fight like humans. But Morrison knew this was only the beginning. The Kethmori had more fleets, more motherships, and they were learning too. The real war was just starting. The victory celebration was short-lived. As the last of the Kethmori ships fled the Kepler sector, Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the enemy retreat. Something felt wrong. The aliens had given up too easily. "Sir, the enemy fleet is moving toward the galactic core," reported Lieutenant Paul Bennett, the ship's navigator. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke unless he had something important to say. "They're not regrouping. They're running." Morrison frowned. The Kethmori had never retreated before. They had always fought to the death, consuming everything in their path. Why would they suddenly flee after one defeat? "Dr. Murphy, are you getting any bio readings from the retreating ships?" he asked. Murphy checked her instruments. "Yes, sir. The organic signatures are showing extreme stress patterns. But there's something else. I'm detecting some kind of dimensional distortion around their motherships." The Allied fleet had suffered heavy losses, but they had won their first real victory against the Kethmori. Admiral Zeth contacted the Defiant from his damaged command ship. "Captain Morrison, should we pursue them?" The Corvin commander asked. Morrison thought about it. Every military instinct told him to chase a retreating enemy, but something deeper warned him to be careful. The Kethmori had been unstoppable for months. They didn't just run away. "Negative, Admiral. We need to understand what they're planning first." Over the next few hours, long-range sensors tracked the Kethmori fleet as it moved toward the center of the galaxy. The alien ships were traveling faster than they ever had before, as if they were desperate to reach something. Helen Ross was monitoring all communications channels. "Captain, I'm picking up fragments of Kethmori transmissions. The computer is trying to translate them." The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. The Kethmori were calling for something. Every ship, every swarm, every mothership in the galaxy was being summoned to one location. They're gathering their entire force, Morrison realized. All of them in one place. Commander Phillips looked worried. Sir, if they're bringing everything they have, we're talking about billions of ships. No fleet in history could stand against. That? Morrison studied the star charts. The Kethmari were heading for a region called the Void Nebula, near the galactic core. It was a dangerous area where space itself was unstable, full of gravitational anomalies and radiation storms. Why there? He wondered aloud. Dr. Murphy had been analyzing the dimensional readings from the retreating fleet. Captain, I think No, the distortions I detected aren't weapons. They're doorways. She put her data on the main screen. The readings showed tears in space-time around the Kethmari motherships, like wounds in reality itself. Doorways to where? Morrison asked. I'm not sure, Murphy admitted. But based on the energy signatures, I think they're connected to another dimension. Maybe even another universe. The pieces began to fall into place. The Kethmari hadn't just appeared in the galaxy 6 months ago. They had come from somewhere else, and they were still connected to that place. What if they're not conquerors? Morrison said suddenly. What if they're refugees? The idea seemed crazy at first, but the more Morrison thought about it, the more sense it made. The Kethmari consumed entire worlds, but they didn't seem to enjoy it. They moved like a species that was desperate, not victorious. If they're refugees, what are they running from? Bennett, asked. Morrison made a decision that would have been impossible for any other captain. We're going to follow them and find out. The Allied fleet was reluctant to pursue. They had just won their first victory and wanted to celebrate. But Morrison convinced them that the Kethmari retreat was more dangerous than their attack. If they're gathering their entire force, they're planning something big, he told the fleet commanders. We need to stop them before they can regroup. The chase began. The Allied fleet followed the Kethmari through the dangerous regions near the galactic core. The journey took weeks, and they lost several ships to gravitational storms and radiation. Bursts, Security Chief Maria Santos was in charge of keeping the crew ready for combat. She was a small woman with quick reflexes and a sharp mind. She had served in the Titan War and knew how to fight in impossible conditions. The crew was getting nervous, she reported to Morrison. They're asking what we're going to do when we catch up to billions of enemy ships. Morrison didn't have a good answer. The mathematical truth was simple. They couldn't win a direct fight against the entire Kethmari fleet. But they couldn't let the aliens escape either. As they traveled deeper into the galactic core, the sensors began picking up massive energy readings. The Kethmari weren't just gathering their fleet. They were building something. Sir, you need to see this, Bennett said, his voice tight with fear. The main screen showed the Void Nebula ahead. Inside the swirling clouds of gas and radiation, they could see the Kethmari fleet. Millions of ships surrounded a massive structure that seemed to be growing from the nebula itself. It's some kind of portal, Murphy said, studying the readings. They're trying to open a permanent doorway to wherever they came from. Morrison understood the implications immediately. If the Kethmari could open a stable portal to their home dimension, they could bring through unlimited reinforcements. The galaxy wouldn't just be conquered. It would be transformed into something else entirely. All ships, prepare for final approach, Morrison ordered. We're going in. The Allied fleet moved toward the nebula, knowing they were flying into almost certain death. The Kethmari had billions of ships, home field advantage, and a desperation that made them more dangerous than ever. But as they entered the nebula, Morrison noticed something strange. The Kethmari weren't attacking. They were too busy with their portal to fight. It was as if they were in a race against time. Captain, I'm detecting something else, Murphy reported. There's another energy signature coming through the portal. Something big. Morrison looked at the readings and felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever the Kethmori were running from, it was following them. The portal they were building wasn't just a doorway home. It was a doorway for something else to come through. All ships, battle stations, Morrison ordered. We're not just fighting the Kethmori anymore. We're fighting for the survival of everything. The final battle was about to begin, and Morrison realized that victory might require more than just military force. It might require understanding an enemy that was as desperate as they were. The portal was almost complete. Morrison could see the massive structure growing in the heart of the nebula, fed by the energy of millions of Kethmori ships. Through the swirling dimensional tier, shapes moved in the darkness beyond. Something was coming through. "Captain, the portal is destabilizing spacetime in a 50-light-year radius," reported Commander Phillips. "If it fully opens, it could collapse this entire sector of the galaxy." Morrison watched the readings with growing alarm. Whatever was on the other side of the portal, the Kethmori were more afraid of it than they were of death itself. They were willing to risk destroying the galaxy to escape from it. "Dr. Murphy, what are you seeing in there?" he asked. Murphy's face was pale as she studied the bio readings. "Captain, there's something alive in that other dimension. Something huge, and it's feeding on the Kethmori's home reality." The pieces clicked together in Morrison's mind. The Kethmori weren't just refugees. They were prey. Something in their home dimension was consuming their universe, and they were trying to escape by moving into this one. But they can't just leave, Morrison realized. Whatever's hunting them is following. The Allied fleet was moving into position around the nebula, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. The Kethmori had brought every ship they had, and they were fighting with the desperation of a species facing extinction. "Sir, incoming transmission," said Helen Ross. "It's from the Kethmori mothership." Morrison was surprised. The aliens had never tried to communicate before. "Put it through." The screen filled with an alien presence that was both terrible and beautiful. It was the queen mind of the Kethmori, a collective consciousness that spoke for billions of beings. "Human," it said in a voice like whispers in the void. "You do not understand what you are fighting." "Then explain it to us," Morrison replied. The queen mind showed them images from their dying dimension. A universe being consumed by something called the void hunger, a force that ate reality itself. The Kethmori had been running from it for eons, consuming world after world to fuel their escape. "We do not wish to destroy your galaxy," the queen mind said. "But we must survive. Our children must live." Morrison looked at his crew. They were all thinking the same thing. The Kethmori were no different from any other species trying to protect their families. They were just desperate enough to destroy everything else to do it. "There has to be another way," Morrison said. The queen mind's response was filled with hopelessness. "We have tried everything. The void hunger cannot be stopped. It consumes all." But Morrison had an idea. Dr. Murphy's research had shown that humans were immune to Kethmori bioweapons because of their unique genetic structure. What if that immunity could be used for something else? "Dr. Murphy, could we use our immunity to create some kind of filter?" he asked. "Something that would let the Kethmori survive in their dimension without the void hunger being able to follow them?" Murphy's eyes lit up. "It's possible. If we could modify their biological structure to match our immunity patterns." "You would do this?" the queen mind asked, its voice filled with disbelief. "You would help us, even after we destroyed your worlds?" Morrison looked at the portal, at the shapes moving in the darkness beyond. The void hunger was almost through. If it entered this dimension, it would consume everything just as it had consumed the Kethmori's home. "We help each other, or we all die," he said simply. The next few hours were a desperate race against time. Dr. Murphy worked with the Kethmoris, bioengineers, to create a genetic filter that would protect them from the void hunger. Commander, Phillips helped stabilize the portal technology to prevent it from collapsing the galaxy. Meanwhile, the Allied fleet fought alongside the Kethmori against the creatures emerging from the portal. The void hunger's servants were like living shadows, beings that existed by consuming the life force of others. Chief Tucker led boarding parties onto the dimensional creatures. Ships. These things aren't like anything we've fought before. He reported, they're not really solid, but our weapons still hurt them. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had been enemies hours before were now fighting side by side against an enemy that threatened all existence. Security. Chief Santos coordinated the defense of the portal itself. We need to hold this position until the filter is ready, she told Morrison. If those things get through in large numbers, we're all dead. The genetic filter was almost complete, but the void hunger was breaking through the portal in greater numbers. The Allied fleet was taking heavy losses, and even the combined might of all the galaxy's species wasn't enough to hold the line. Captain, the filter is ready, Murphy reported, but we need to test it on a volunteer. The queen mind of the Kethmori made the decision. We will be the test. If we die, at least we die trying to save both our peoples. The filter was deployed through the Kethmori fleet. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The bioweapons that had made them so deadly were transformed into something else entirely. Instead of consuming life, they began to repel the void hunger. It's working, Murphy said in amazement. The Kethmori are becoming immune to the void hunger's influence. But the real test came when the Queen Mind used its new immunity to enter the portal and confront the void hunger directly. The massive collective consciousness of the Kethmori, now protected by human genetic patterns, began to fight back against the force that had driven them from their home. Human Morrison, the Queen Mind said, its voice now filled with wonder. You have given us something we lost long ago. Hope. The battle in the portal raged for hours, but gradually the void hunger began to retreat. The Kethmori, no longer prey, had become predators in their own right. They were pushing the darkness back into the depths of their dying dimension. Portal is stabilizing, Phillips reported. The dimensional tier is closing. As the portal sealed, the last of the void hungers. Servants were destroyed. The galaxy was safe, but more importantly, the Kethmori had found a way to return home and reclaim their universe. We owe you a debt that cannot be repaid, the Queen Mind said to Morrison. You have saved not just our species, but our entire reality. Morrison looked at the Allied fleet, at the species that had come together to fight an impossible enemy. We saved each other. That's what people do. The war was over, but the galaxy was forever changed. The Kethmori began the long process of returning to their dimension, armed with the knowledge they needed to fight the void hunger. Many chose to stay and help rebuild the worlds they had damaged. As the Defiant prepared to return to Earth, Morrison reflected on what they had accomplished. They hadn't won through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had won by recognizing that their enemy was just another species trying to survive. Sir, we're getting communication requests from dozens of species, Helen Ross reported. They want to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. Morrison smiled. Humanity had entered the galactic community not as conquerors, but as teachers. They had shown the galaxy that sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy was to understand them. The universe was a dangerous place, full of threats that could destroy entire civilizations. But it was also full of possibilities. And Morrison knew that humans would face whatever came next with the same courage and creativity that had saved the galaxy. The stars were calling, and humanity was ready to answer.